What in God's name do you think you're doing here? Brittany DeWitt's voice, sharp and brittle as a shard of ice, slices through the polite murmur of the Aspen Gala. Before we dive into the absolute train wreck that's about to unfold, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to Black Voices Speak right now, because you are not going to want to miss a single second of this. Now, have you ever been looked at like you were less than dirt? By people who had no idea they were standing on your ground? The woman in the understated but exquisitely tailored black gown turns slowly, her gaze calm, almost analytical. Around them, in the grand ballroom of the St. Regis, the cream of Colorado's high society stills, their champagne flutes pausing mid-air. 100 discreet glances become 100 focused stares. The scent of pine from the massive Christmas wreaths mixes with the expensive perfume of impending drama. Phone cameras, initially hidden, begin to rise like periscopes from a sea of tuxedos and jewels. I don't believe we've met. I'm Dr. Alani Vance. Her voice is a low contralto, smooth as velvet, but with an undercurrent of something unyielding, something forged in boardrooms far more intimidating than this one. Perhaps you should check your guest list again. It's not often one gets to witness the precise moment an entire dynasty begins to fracture. But for the next 45 minutes, that's exactly what the world would see. Eleanor DeWitt, the family matriarch, glides to her daughter's side, a galleon in full sail, her diamond and sapphire necklace a constellation of cold fire against her wrinkled décolletage. There is no mistake, dear. The help are supposed to use the service entrance. Her words are coated in a thin veneer of condescending sweetness, a poison dart delivered with a smile. Beside them, Harrison Harry DeWitt, Jr., a vapid princeling in a poorly fitted Tom Ford suit, snickers and lifts his phone. His thumb swipes to Instagram, the little red circle of a live broadcast appearing in the corner. "Dad, you seeing this? Got a stray?" he mutters, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of anticipated cruelty. His father, Harrison DeWitt Sr., the patriarch of a mining and logistics empire built over a century, gives a curt, almost imperceptible nod towards two hulking security guards making their way through the throng. His Patek Philippe Grandmaster chime catches the light from the antler chandeliers, a silent, obscene declaration of his own importance. The family, a united front of inherited arrogance, forms a semi-circle, their disdain a palpable, suffocating force field. Alani glances at her own watch, an elegant but unassuming Audemars Piguet. Exactly 9:13 p.m. She allows a flicker of a thought. They are right on schedule. The St. Regis Ballroom is a monument to rustic opulence. Massive timber beams crisscross the vaulted ceiling. Floor-to-ceiling windows frame the snow-dusted peaks of the Rocky Mountains, and a fireplace large enough to roast an ox roars with cheerful indifference to the human drama unfolding before it. Tonight's gala for the DeWitt Legacy Foundation is the social event of the Aspen winter season, a carefully curated ecosystem of old money and new ambition. The two security guards, former Secret Service by the look of their posture and the invisible wires coiling into their ears, arrive. "Ma'am, we're going to need to see your invitation," the taller one says, his voice a practiced, anodyne baritone. He doesn't sound angry, just weary, as if he's performed this exact task 100 times before. Alani reaches into her simple black Bottega Veneta clutch, her movements unhurried, graceful. Around them, the circle of onlookers tightens, their collective breath held. Someone behind a flute of Dom Perignon whispers, "Get this for World Star," a ripple of cruel laughter following. "Oh, this is going to be rich," Brittany sneers, pitching her voice to Carrie. A woman in oversized Chanel glasses holds her phone higher, her Instagram live feed showing 1,582 viewers and climbing. The comments scroll in a blur of emojis and insults. Karen strikes again. "Get her, sis. Who let her in?" Alani produces a heavy, cream-colored card, the DeWitt family crest embossed in gold leaf. The guard takes it, his brow furrowing as he examines it under the ballroom light. This appears to be authentic. Appears? Eleanor's laugh is like the tinkling of tiny, breaking icicles. "Harrison, darling, didn't we tell the resort to upgrade their security scanners? So easy to forge things these days." The accusation, baseless and vile, hangs in the air. Several guests nod in sagely agreement, their own positions secured by the same invisible walls of privilege. Harry Jr.'s phone captures it all, every condescending glance, every whispered insult. His live viewers have tripled. "Content gold," he mouths to himself, already thinking of the caption. "I can assure you of the invitation's authenticity," Alani says, her voice still impossibly level. "How exactly?" Brittany crosses her arms, her chin jutting out. "Do you have a confirmation email? A reference from the board member who sponsored your ticket?" The crowd, smelling blood, presses even closer. This has transcended mere social faux pas. It has become a public spectacle, a trial by accusation. Dr. Eris Thorne, a renowned cardiologist and one of the few other black men in the room, steps forward. "Brittany, perhaps we should all just take a moment." Dr. Thorne, with all due respect, Eleanor cuts him off, her voice losing its sugary coating and revealing the steel beneath. "We have standards for a reason. The Foundation's global reputation depends on maintaining a certain decorum." The coded language is as clear as the mountain air outside. A few people exchange uncomfortable looks, but no one else dares to intervene. A waiter, trying to navigate the sudden bottleneck, stumbles, jostling Alani's arm. She steadies herself with an athlete's grace, but the motion dislodges a business card from her open clutch. It flutters to the polished oak floor. Harry Jr., ever the documentarian of his own family's downfall, zooms in with his phone as the shorter security guard bends to retrieve it. "Vance Vanguard Capital," the guard reads aloud, his voice flat before pausing. A flicker of confusion, of recognition, crosses his face. "Never heard of it?" Brittany says with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Probably some little wealth management firm trying to network. It's just sad, really." The live stream comments explode. But one comment, quickly buried in the avalanche, reads, "Vance Vanguard owns half of Silicon Valley, you morons. The family, cocooned in their ignorance, doesn't see it. The digital world is turning against them, but inside this bubble of timber and ego, they are still the protagonists of their own story." "Ma'am, if you could just step over here," the second guard suggests, gesturing towards a service corridor. "We can sort this out away from the crowd." Privately, Alani's voice remains even, but a new quality has entered it, a quiet authority that makes the guard pause. Harrison Sr. consults his Patek Philippe. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a major announcement in precisely 14 minutes. Perhaps this situation could be expedited." The announcement. The entire reason for the gala. The unveiling of the DeWitt Foundation's new partner for Project Constellation, a transformative $1.5 billion green energy initiative that would not only secure their legacy, but also clean up the environmental mess their mining operations had made over the last century. "Of course," Eleanor adds, her smile back in place. "We can't have any unpleasantness disrupt such a vital evening." In a corner, a reporter from the Wall Street Journal, David Chen, who had been idly scrolling on his phone, suddenly looks up. He recognizes the name on the business card the guard is still holding. He's seen it in SEC filings and shareholder reports. A slow smile spreads across his face as he discreetly opens his laptop. Alani sees the reporter's change in expression. A ghost of a smile, the first crack in her serene facade, touches her lips. "I understand your position completely, Mr. DeWitt," she says, her eyes locking with the patriarch's. "Time is money, especially when billions of dollars are on the line." The profound irony sails right over his perfectly coiffed head. "Exactly," he nods, pleased that she finally seems to comprehend. "I'm glad we're on the same page." Brittany, sensing victory, gestures imperiously toward the service elevators. "The main elevators are for our guests, I'm sure you understand. It is the final, gratuitous humiliation." In front of Aspen's elite, they are directing her to the staff exit like a scullery maid. Harry Jr.'s live viewer count hits 25,000. He adds a caption to his story. "When they just don't get the memo, Otter's exclusive Tagtut for Know Your Place." But outside their insulated world, the digital storm is gathering force. The hashtag #TotzerDeWitt debacle is starting to trend in Denver and New York. The Wall Street Journal reporter begins to type, a headline already forming in his mind. Alani takes a single, deliberate step towards the service corridor, a feint that allows the family to swell with their triumph. Then she stops. Her phone, deep inside her clutch, buzzes with a pre-timed notification. Her expression changes, a subtle shift from passive observation to active command. "Actually," she says, turning back to face the stunned family, "I think I will wait right here." "Excuse me?" Brittany's voice climbs half an octave. "I said, I'll wait," Alani repeats, her tone still conversational, but now underlined with tungsten steel. "I have a few urgent calls to make while we wait for your announcement." She retrieves her phone. The screen displays 3 missed calls from the board of directors of Constellation Energy Group. The reporter's eyes widen. He knows that name. He knows exactly who they are, and more importantly, he knows what their connection is to tonight's big announcement. "Ma'am," the guard says, his uncertainty now palpable, "we really must insist." 13 minutes, Alani says softly, glancing at her watch. "Isn't that right, Mr. DeWitt? 13 minutes until your big moment." Harrison Sr. nods, his impatience warring with a new, unfamiliar sense of dread. "Yes, and we can't have—" "Perfect." She interrupts him smoothly, dialing a number with calm precision. "That should be just enough time." The phone rings once, twice, then connects. "Michael, it's Alani," she says into the phone, her voice clear and resonant. "Yes, I know you're in the final prep meeting. I apologize for the interruption, but we have a developing situation here in Aspen. We need to discuss the DeWitt partnership." The color drains from Harrison DeWitt Sr.'s face, as if a plug has been pulled. Harry Jr. stops filming, his jaw slack. Brittany's triumphant smirk dissolves into a mask of confusion. Only Eleanor hasn't yet connected the dots. "Who is she talking to?" she whispers to no one in particular. The Wall Street Journal reporter begins typing furiously as Dr. Alani Vance continues her call, her voice carrying across the silent, cavernous ballroom. "I'm afraid there's been a last-minute complication with tonight's announcement." The silence in the St. Regis ballroom was no longer polite. It was absolute, a heavy blanket that smothered all other sound. The string quartet had faltered, their bows hovering over their instruments. 250 of the wealthiest people west of the Mississippi were frozen, their attention riveted on the woman in black, who was calmly dismantling an empire with a single phone call. "Yes, Michael, I understand the contracts were signed," Alani continued, her voice echoing slightly off the high, timbered ceiling. "But as you know, all our agreements contain a material adverse change clause. Circumstances here have changed." Harrison Sr. took an unsteady step forward, his face a ghastly shade of gray. "Miss, I demand to know who you are speaking to." Alani held up a single, slender finger, a universal sign to wait. The gesture was so instinctual, so imbued with innate authority, that the powerful patriarch of DeWitt Global Industries actually stopped and fell silent. The viewer count on Harry Jr.'s forgotten live stream exploded past 35,000, then 40,000. The comments were a torrent of digital chaos. "OMG, she said DeWitt partnership. This family is toast. Who is this woman?" DeWitt debacle is trending nationally. But inside their bubble of privilege, the DeWitts were deaf to the tsunami of public opinion roaring towards them. Brittany clutched her father's arm. "Daddy, who is Constellation Energy? Why does that name sound familiar?" Eleanor fanned her flushed face with an auction program. "I'm sure I saw it in the board packet. Wasn't that the—" "Oh dear." Harry Jr. finally lowered his phone, a sliver of doubt piercing his thick skull. "Wait," he said, his voice a panicked squeak. Isn't that the company for Project Constellation? The company we're announcing the partnership with?" The Wall Street Journal reporter, David Chen, was typing so fast his fingers were a blur. His initial article was already live, a placeholder for the bombshells to come. DeWitt Foundation Gala, marred by public confrontation, mystery woman at center of controversy. A stage manager, headset clamped on, spoke into her microphone, her voice trembling slightly. 10 minutes to the announcement, Mr. DeWitt. 10 minutes. Harrison Sr.'s hand shook as he reached for a glass of water from a passing tray. Perhaps we should postpone the announcement." "No postponement will be necessary," Alani said, smoothly ending her call. She slipped the phone back into her clutch, her movements as fluid and deliberate as a chess grandmaster placing a checkmate. "I just needed to put a preliminary hold on the wire transfer." The security guards looked at each other, then at their boss, who seemed to have aged 10 years. The taller one spoke into his wrist radio. "Control, get the hotel manager to the main ballroom, immediately." "Okay, let's just pause right here. The temperature in the room just dropped 20 degrees. Can you feel the panic setting in? This is the moment when the bullies realize they've picked on the wrong person, and it is glorious. If you're enjoying watching this empire of arrogance start to crumble, let me know in the comments. Type karma down below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This is only getting started. Dr. Eris Thorne pushed his way through the gawking crowd. "Brittany, for God's sake, I think you owe this woman an apology." "Elizabeth, please!" Eleanor snapped, her voice stripped of all its former grace. "This is a private family matter now." "A family matter?" Alani tilted her head, a gesture of mild curiosity that was somehow more menacing than any outward display of anger. "That's a fascinating choice of words, Mrs. DeWitt." The way she articulated the name, each syllable precise, a subtle emphasis on the wit, sent a fresh wave of unease through the room. This wasn't someone taking a wild guess at social dynamics. This was someone who had read the entire playbook. Harry Jr.'s phone, lying forgotten on the floor, pinged incessantly with notifications. His Instagram story had been screen recorded and shared thousands of times. It was on Twitter, on TikTok, on Reddit. TMZ had been tagged. The hashtag #DeWittRacist was gaining traction. "Ma'am, we really need to de-escalate this situation." The security guard tried again, his tone now pleading. "A resolution?" Alani nodded thoughtfully, as if considering the concept for the first time. "Yes, a resolution is precisely what's needed. Mr. DeWitt, tell me, what was DeWitt Global's revenue for the last fiscal quarter?" The question was so unexpected, so bizarrely specific, that it hung in the air like a puff of smoke. I beg your pardon?" Harrison Sr. stammered. Your revenue. Q3 2024, approximately $1.48 billion, if my memory serves me correctly. The number was not approximate, it was exact. David Chen stopped typing and stared. He had written the earnings report on that quarter. The number was correct, down to the million. Brittany's face, already pale, turned the color of chalk. How could you possibly know that? Public filings, Alani said with a dismissive shrug. The SEC makes all sorts of interesting documents available to the public. You should read them sometime. 9 minutes to announcement, the stage manager's voice chirped through her headset, now sounding like a countdown to an execution. The crowd was a silent, unblinking wall of eyes. The mood had shifted from amused mockery to rapt anticipation, and now to a creeping sense of dread on behalf of the family that had, just minutes ago, held all the power. I don't understand what you're trying to imply, Eleanor said, her voice wavering like a flickering candle. I'm not implying a thing, Mrs. DeWitt. I'm simply stating facts. Facts about your company's market position, your upcoming announcement, and your desperate need for a strategic partnership to offset the declining profits in your legacy mining divisions. She spoke with the detached authority of a ratings analyst delivering a downgrade. Harry Jr. finally jolted into action, frantically Googled Vance Vanguard Capital on his cracked phone screen. The first result made his blood turn to ice water. Assets under management, $75 billion. One of the most influential and aggressive private equity firms in the world. He shoved the phone in front of his sister's face. She stared at it, her mouth opening and closing silently. 8 minutes to announcement. The event staff were now openly panicking. Photographers near the stage were adjusting their lenses, ready to capture... What exactly? Harrison Sr. tried one last time to assert his dominance. Young lady, I don't know what kind of game you're playing here. A game? Alani's laugh was soft, a rustle of silk. Mr. DeWitt, I can assure you I never, ever play games with my investments. The word investments landed with the force of a physical blow. David Chen's fingers resumed their frantic dance across the keyboard. He was connecting dots the DeWitts couldn't even see yet. Vance Vanguard wasn't just an investment firm. They were corporate raiders, kingmakers, the kind of entity that could buy a company like DeWitt Global with the financial equivalent of couch change and restructure it before lunch. The livestream viewer count rocketed past 60,000. People were sharing it to LinkedIn with captions like, "This is what happens when old money meets real power." Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice, the guard said, a pathetic echo of his earlier authority. My voice? Alani looked genuinely puzzled. I believe I'm speaking at a perfectly normal volume. Perhaps the acoustics in this magnificent room are simply better than you realized. She was right. The vaulted ceilings and hard surfaces carried every single word to every corner of the ballroom. 7 minutes. A single bead of sweat traced a path down Harrison Sr.'s temple. Eleanor clutched her sapphire necklace as if it were a talisman. Harrison, maybe you should call Stephen, she whispered. Stephen Croft, their top corporate lawyer. An excellent suggestion, Alani agreed cheerfully. You should probably have your legal counsel on standby. Have him review your partnership agreements, specifically the clauses pertaining to reputational damage and breaches of public trust. The statement was delivered casually, but it was as terrifying as a loaded gun. Brittany's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. She needed to call someone, anyone, to make this nightmare stop. Harry had stopped looking at his phone entirely. He was just staring at the search results for Dr. Alani Vance, Yale Law, Stanford MBA, doctorate in economics from Cambridge, named by Forbes as one of the most powerful women in finance 5 years in a row. Estimated personal net worth, $3.8 billion. Oh my God, he whispered, the words carrying in the dead silence. Oh my God. Several guests heard him and took an involuntary step back from the family, as if their ignorance was a communicable disease. Dr. Thorne stepped forward again. Perhaps we should all just take a breath and— 6 minutes to announcement, the coordinator's voice cut him off, sharp with panic. Alani checked her Audemars Piguet. The understated platinum watch suddenly seemed less like a simple timepiece and more like a detonator's stopwatch. Time is indeed a valuable commodity, she murmured, throwing Harrison Sr.'s own pompous words back at him, especially when entire legacies are on the line. The Wall Street Journal reporter hit send on his updated story. The new headline: DeWitt Gala devolves into PR disaster as mystery woman challenges billion-dollar partnership. But David Chen was already working on the next update because he knew something the DeWitts still didn't. He knew exactly who Dr. Alani Vance was to his readers, and he knew what her firm was capable of doing to companies that embarrassed her. The final revelation was coming. The entire room could feel it, a barometric pressure drop before a hurricane makes landfall. 5 minutes, the coordinator announced, her voice now tight with unshed tears. Alani smiled, a genuine, brilliant expression that held no warmth at all. It was the smile of a predator that knows the hunt is already over. 4 minutes to announcement! The stage manager's voice was a ragged plea broadcast over the ballroom's sound system. Backstage, producers and technicians were in a state of chaos, their clipboards and headsets useless against the unfolding catastrophe. The meticulously planned evening, timed to the second, was bleeding out on the polished oak floor. Alani's phone buzzed once more, a sharp, insistent vibration against the silent tension. She glanced at the screen, a text from her chief of staff. Her expression hardened into one of finality, the look a judge gives before passing sentence. "You'll all have to excuse me for just one moment," she said, her voice imbued with a chillingly casual politeness, as if she were merely stepping away to powder her nose. She turned her back on the DeWitt family, a gesture of such profound dismissal that it was more insulting than any word she could have uttered. The call connected instantly. "Michael, it's Alani again." Her voice, amplified by the room's acoustics, was the only sound. "Yes, I'm still at the gala. It has been illuminating." She paused, letting the word hang in the air. "I need you to execute the Constellation withdrawal protocol, effective immediately." The words were a shaped charge, designed for maximum structural damage. They ripped through the ballroom, and in their wake, the DeWitt dynasty collapsed. Harrison Sr. staggered back, his hand flailing for the stone hearth of the fireplace to steady himself. His Patek Philippe, a monument to a lifetime of success, now looked like a gaudy manacle on a condemned man. Wait, what did she say?" Brittany's voice was a thin, desperate whine. "Daddy, what's a withdrawal protocol? What does that mean?" Even as the words left her mouth, she knew. It was the sound of a door slamming shut on their future. But her father couldn't answer. He couldn't speak. He couldn't breathe. His face had gone from ashen to a waxy, translucent gray, the color of death. The assembled guests leaned forward as one, a silent Greek chorus witnessing a tragedy of hubris. "Yes, I am fully aware of the financial implications," Alani continued into her phone, her tone as dispassionate as if she were discussing the weather. $1.5 billion, the entire partnership. Terminate it. I want confirmation that the kill order has been executed before I leave this room." The number, spoken so clearly, hung in the air like a guillotine's blade. Eleanor's sapphire necklace seemed to be strangling her. "Did she say billion?" she croaked. Harry Jr. finally dropped his phone. It hit the floor with a sickening crack, the sound of something precious and irreplaceable being shattered. David Chen's laptop screen reflected his wide, incredulous eyes. He typed a new headline. Breaking mystery woman at DeWitt Gala orders cancellation of $1.5 billion project Constellation. Partnership live on the scene. The viewer count on Harry's live feed, still running from his shattered phone on the floor, surpassed 100,000. The comments were unreadable, a waterfall of pure shock and awe. Words flashed by. Legend, queen, boss, destroyed them. I don't understand, Brittany whimpered, tears beginning to trace paths through her expensive makeup. Who is she? Dr. Eris Thorne stepped forward again, his voice clear and steady, cutting through the haze of confusion. He had finally placed her. Perhaps I should have introduced her properly, he said, looking not at the DeWitts, but at the crowd. This is Dr. Alani Vance. She is the founder, CEO, and managing partner of Vance Vanguard Capital. The name, now attached to the face, landed like a second, more powerful bomb. Whispers erupted, spreading through the ballroom like wildfire. Vance Vanguard? The firm that restructured the entire American auto industry? That's her? I saw her on the cover of Forbes. They called her the Titan of Turnarounds. Harrison Sr. slid down the stone hearth, his legs no longer able to support him. His watch, which 20 minutes ago had been a symbol of his dominion, now seemed a pathetic, childish trinket compared to the quiet, devastating power radiating from the woman in the simple black dress. 3 minutes to announcement, the stage manager whispered, the words now an absurd joke. There would be no announcement. Harry scrambled to pick up his phone, the screen a spiderweb of broken glass. The Forbes article he'd been reading stared back at him like a ghost. Dr. Alani Vance. Age, 44. Founder and CEO, Vance Vanguard Capital. Yale Law, Stanford MBA, Cambridge PhD. Known for aggressive, value-oriented investment strategies and hostile takeovers of underperforming legacy companies. Net worth, $3.8 billion. Oh God, he breathed, the words catching in his throat. Oh God, we are so screwed. The phone call wasn't over. Alani was adding the final, crushing details. Yes, Michael, I know the contracts were ironclad. But review Clause 32, subsection B. It allows for immediate termination in cases of actions by one party that cause significant and irreparable reputational harm to the other. I believe a live-streamed video of their heir calling me a stray, which is currently trending nationally under the hashtag DeWitt Racist, qualifies. She was quoting their own contract back to them, a contract she had clearly memorized. Brittany's champagne glass, which she had been clutching with a white-knuckled grip, slipped from her nerveless fingers. It shattered on the floor, the sound a crystalline shriek that made everyone flinch. Everyone except Alani. No, don't worry about the termination fees. Vance Vanguard will absorb the full amount. Consider it a marketing expense, the cost of teaching a valuable lesson about due diligence. Harrison Sr. finally found his voice, a dry, rattling thing. Dr. Vance, please. This is all a terrible, terrible misunderstanding. She held up that same finger again, stopping him cold. The gesture now carried the weight of $75 billion behind it. Michael, I'll call you back in 5 minutes to coordinate the public statement. Yes, I know this scuttles the Green Energy Initiative. We'll find a new partner, a better partner, someone whose values align with our own. She ended the call and turned to look directly at Harrison Sr., her eyes devoid of pity. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. David Chen's fingers were poised over his keyboard, waiting. This was the story of a lifetime. 2 minutes to announcement, the coordinator's voice said, a ghost from a world that no longer existed. Catherine DeWitt, a woman who had never been speechless in her 68 years of navigating high society, could only open and close her mouth. making no sound. Victoria tried to plead. "Dr. Vance, I'm sure if we just talk this through." There was a breakdown in communication. "A communication breakdown," Alani repeated, testing the words on her tongue. "An interesting euphemism for what just occurred." Her gaze swept across the ruined family. "Let's review the communication, shall we? I arrived at a gala to which I was personally invited by your foundation's board, an invitation I accepted as a courtesy. I was immediately told I didn't belong, that I should use the help's entrance. Your daughter questioned my very presence. Your son broadcast my humiliation to the world for sport, and you, Mr. DeWitt, accused me of forgery before sicking your security on me like a dog." She laid out their sins, a calm, factual indictment. The Instagram comments were now just streams of fire emojis and crowns. She's reading them their rights. And their last rites. Harry Jr. stared at the Forbes article again. The headline was, "The Architect." The subheadline, "How Alani Vance is Rebuilding American Industry, One Undervalued and Mismanaged Company at a Time." A cold dread, heavier than anything he had ever felt, settled in his gut. He had filmed himself mocking the most lethal predator in the entire corporate ecosystem. "1 minute to announcement." Harrison Sr. straightened his tie, a pathetic, reflexive gesture of a man clinging to the last vestiges of his dignity. "Dr. Vance, please, my family, we were wrong, horribly wrong. But destroying this partnership, it won't just hurt us. It will impact thousands of jobs, the entire green energy initiative. Mr. DeWitt." Her voice cut through his desperate plea like a surgeon's scalpel. "Are you familiar with Vance Vanguard's mission statement?" He could only shake his head, mute. "To build transformative, sustainable partnerships with organizations that demonstrate an unwavering commitment to integrity, equality, and social responsibility." Each word was a hammer blow. "Tonight, your family demonstrated, in front of hundreds of witnesses and over 100,000 viewers online, exactly what your commitment to equality is worth." Eleanor clutched her husband's arm. "Harrison, do something. Call Stephen. Call the board." But Harrison Sr. knew it was over. There was no one to call. No backroom deal could undo a viral video. No amount of old money could erase a public record of their own bigotry. 30 seconds to announcement. The coordinator's voice finally broke. Someone had to tell the press, the donors, the politicians waiting in the wings, that the triumphant evening was a smoking crater. Alani checked her watch. "I believe your announcement time has arrived, Mr. DeWitt," she said softly. The family stared at her, their faces a tableau of utter devastation. "Time for announcement," the coordinator's voice cracked one last time. But Dr. Alani Vance wasn't quite finished. There was one final piece of the puzzle to put in place, one last revelation that would elevate this from a business catastrophe to a complete and total hostile takeover of their very existence. She reached back into her simple black clutch and withdrew a single folded sheet of paper. "There's one more thing you should all be aware of," she said, unfolding the document with lethal precision. The rustle of the heavy bond paper was the loudest sound in the world. "Vance Vanguard doesn't just control the Constellation Partnership." A smile, sharp and unsettling, touched her lips. "As of our last 13F filing, we also own 38.2% of DeWitt Global Industries." The statement detonated in the ballroom with the force of a tactical nuclear weapon. The silence that followed was not empty. It was a vacuum sucking the very air and life from the room. An empire had not just been challenged, it had been conquered. Harrison DeWitt Sr., who had been leaning against the fireplace, pushed himself upright, his spine ramrod straight. A lifetime of boardroom battles, of corporate warfare, flickered in his eyes. When faced with annihilation, A king must not be seen to crawl. "Dr. Vance," he said, his voice raspy but steady. "Perhaps this is a conversation best had in private." "Privately?" Alani's voice was laced with a chilling amusement. "Mr. DeWitt, your family just spent the better part of an hour orchestrating a very public humiliation. I think a little public transparency is precisely what this moment calls for." "Hoitom." She held up the document she had withdrawn from her clutch. The letterhead was stark and elegant. Vance Vanguard Capital, Equities and Acquisitions Division. "Pursuant to the SEC filing submitted 6 months ago, my firm, through a series of carefully managed open market purchases and private block trades, has acquired a controlling interest of 38.2% of the outstanding common stock of DeWitt Global Industries." Each word was a nail being hammered into a coffin. The numbers were precise, brutal, and, worst of all, verifiable. Harry Jr.'s cracked phone screen showed him the grim truth as he frantically pulled up the latest investor relations report. 38%, he whispered in horror. That makes her the largest single shareholder." Brittany, who had been staring blankly, finally understood the magnitude of what was happening. "But that's not possible," she stammered. "The family trust? The trust owns 32%. "The DeWitt Family Trust owns a combined 4%, Alani corrected her, with the effortless precision of a master accountant. Individually, Harrison Sr. holds 14.2%, Eleanor holds 5.8%, Brittany, you hold 7.1%, and Harry Jr. holds a paltry 5.3%. I have, of course, done my homework." The Instagram Live audience, which Harry had inadvertently left running, had swelled to an astonishing 180,000 viewers. The comments were a blur of pure pandemonium. "She owns them. Literally owns their company. This is the greatest thing I have ever seen. Queen, CEO, legend. They work for her now." David Chen, the WSJ reporter, was typing as if his life depended on it, his face illuminated by the glow of his screen. Explosive, Dr. Alani Vance reveals 38.2% ownership stake in DeWitt Global at Gala. Family faces imminent hostile takeover. Eleanor clutched her necklace, her knuckles white. "But that means you can call for a vote. You can demand seats on the board. You could force a change in leadership." "Yes, Mrs. DeWitt," Alani said, her tone almost gentle now, the way one speaks to a small child. "That is exactly what it means." The implications crashed over the room in waves. Every executive, every investor, every lawyer present understood the new reality. With a 38.2% stake, Dr. Vance didn't just have a voice. She was the lightning and the thunder. Dr. Eris Thorne, his face a mixture of shock and admiration, simply shook his head. Alani acknowledged him with a brief, respectful nod. "I appreciate your earlier attempts to intervene, Doctor, but this is no longer a social matter. This is a business matter that requires my immediate and full attention." She turned back to the shattered family. "Your company's current market capitalization is approximately $4.8 billion. My stake, therefore, represents an equity value of over $1.8 billion. That is not an investment I am inclined to leave in incompetent hands." Harrison Sr. made one last desperate play from a rulebook that was now obsolete. "Dr. Vance, Vance Vanguard has been a silent partner for 6 months. Your returns have been excellent, nearly 18%. "Above market performance, I agree," she cut him off smoothly. "But as you are about to learn, Mr. DeWitt, financial returns are not my only metric for success." The room held its collective breath. "Vance Vanguard Capital has a fiduciary duty to our partners and a moral duty to the world. We practice value-based investing. We adhere to strict ESG, environmental, social, and governance, protocols, and tonight your family provided a master class, live-streamed to nearly 200,000 people, on your corporate governance. You have demonstrated values that are fundamentally, catastrophically incompatible with our own. Brittany stepped forward, her hands clasped in a gesture of supplication. Dr. Vance, we made a mistake, a horrible, unforgivable mistake, but surely we can— Can what, Brittany? Alani's voice was soft, but the question was a razor. Pretend the last hour didn't happen? Pretend the entire world didn't just watch your family attempt to eject a woman from a party because she was black? The word, unspoken until now, hung in the air like poison gas, lethal, suffocating, undeniable. Harry looked at his phone, at the digital universe calling for his head. CNN was calling. The New York Times was calling. A boycott of DeWitt Global products was already being organized on Twitter. As the majority shareholder, Alani continued, her voice ringing with newfound authority, I am exercising my right to call an emergency meeting of the Board of Directors, Monday morning, 8 a.m. sharp. Harrison Sr.'s face went slack. The agenda will be threefold: a complete overhaul of corporate governance, a vote of no confidence in the current leadership, and the immediate implementation of a company-wide diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative. Each item on the agenda was a death blow to the company as they knew it. Furthermore, she added, I am recommending the immediate and indefinite suspension of all senior management pending a full independent investigation into the toxic corporate culture that clearly starts at the very top. Brittany staggered, as if she'd been shot. Suspension? But I'm the chief operating officer. You were the COO, Alani corrected her gently. As of this moment, your performance is under review, and as the person who signs the checks, my review carries a certain weight. The math was as simple as it was brutal. Her 38.2% was more than enough to sway the institutional investors and pension funds that made up the rest of the board. She didn't just carry weight, she was the gravitational center of the entire company. Eleanor found her voice, a pathetic whisper. Dr. Vance, please. This company has been in our family for 4 generations. Our legacy? Our reputation? Your reputation? Alani's eyebrows arched. Mrs. DeWitt, your reputation is currently the #1 trending topic on every social media platform on the planet. The hashtag #ChurchDeWittRacist has over 5 million impressions and is climbing exponentially. Your legacy is being written as we speak, in the comments of hundreds of thousands of people who have just witnessed your family's true character. The 2 security guards began to back away slowly, wanting no part of the corporate execution they were witnessing. Harrison Sr. played his last card, the one he always played. The jobs, Dr. Vance. Think of the jobs. DeWitt Global employs 30,000 people. You wouldn't jeopardize their livelihoods over a personal slight. A personal slight? For the first time, a flicker of genuine fire appeared in Alani's eyes. Mr. DeWitt, you seem to be under the impression that this is personal. Let me be clear. This has never been personal. This is business. This is my business. She checked her watch with a final, deliberate motion. Your company's revenue is dependent on public perception and corporate partnerships. You just incinerated both. Without the Constellation deal, you face a catastrophic earnings shortfall. But don't worry about the 30,000 employees. She paused, letting the family hang on her every word. My firm specializes in corporate turnarounds. We protect the workers. We streamline operations. We eliminate toxic and redundant assets. The translation was clear. She could and would run the company without them. Victoria made one last, futile appeal. The other shareholders, the board, they won't stand for this. Your shareholders? Alani's laugh was soft, but it echoed with the sound of absolute victory. Brittany, I am your shareholder. The board doesn't work for you anymore. They work for me." David Chen hit publish. The headline screamed across the globe. DeWitt Global in freefall as largest shareholder Dr. Alani Vance seizes control after viral racism incident. The emergency board meeting agenda was a foregone conclusion. "The alternative," Alani added quietly, "is a full tender offer for a hostile takeover, which, given tonight's events, I am quite confident the rest of the shareholders would approve with overwhelming enthusiasm. The final, nuclear option. A complete erasure of the DeWitt name from the company they founded." Harrison Sr. looked around the opulent ballroom, at the portraits of his father and grandfather, at the empire it took a century to build, and less than an hour for his children to burn to the ground. "What do you want from us?" he finally asked, his voice broken. Alani folded the document and slipped it back into her clutch. "I want what Vance Vanguard Capital has always wanted, Mr. DeWitt, a return on our investment." Her gaze was unflinching. "Monday morning, 8 a.m., don't be late." She turned to walk away, then paused, as if remembering a final detail. "Oh, and Mr. DeWitt, you should have your public relations team draft an apology, a real one, the kind that acknowledges the profound harm you've caused and outlines a clear, actionable path toward redemption. The board, my board, will expect to see it by close of business tomorrow." Monday morning, 7:58 a.m. The DeWitt Global Boardroom, a place that had always been Harrison Sr.'s cathedral of power, now felt like a mausoleum. The mahogany table gleamed under the recessed lighting, but offered no comfort. He, Eleanor, Brittany, and Harry sat in their custom leather chairs, but they were no longer thrones. They were the electric chairs. Precisely on time, Dr. Alani Vance entered, not alone, but with a team of 4. 2 of the sharpest corporate lawyers from Skadden Arps, a renowned restructuring expert, and a new head of human resources poached from Google. Her presence recalibrated the room's entire gravitational field. The emergency board vote was a formality, a public execution by conference call. The motion to suspend Brittany and Harry from their executive roles passed unanimously. The motion to strip Harrison Sr. of his chairmanship and voting rights for 1 year passed 8-1. The motion to accept Eleanor's resignation from the foundation board was approved without discussion. The agenda Dr. Vance had outlined at the gala was not a suggestion. It was the new law of the land. The immediate fallout was swift and systemic. A $100 million fund, seeded by Vance Vanguard and matched by DeWitt Global, was established to invest in minority and women-led businesses in the green energy sector. Mandatory, rigorous anti-bias and inclusive leadership training, designed by specialists from the Wharton School, was implemented for every single manager in the company, starting with Brittany and Harry. Their LinkedIn profiles were updated with a mandatory disclaimer: currently undergoing remedial corporate leadership and ethics training following public breach of company values. James Sr.'s public apology, written by Alani's team and delivered by him on a live broadcast, became a Harvard Business School case study in crisis management and authentic accountability. The long-term transformation was even more profound. The DeWitt Dignity Protocol became the company's new ethical constitution. An independent diversity and equity council was formed, with the power to veto hiring decisions and promotions. All corporate data on pay equity, hiring, and advancement by race and gender was made public in quarterly reports, making DeWitt Global a reluctant pioneer in corporate transparency. The company's mission statement was rewritten, a collaborative effort between the new leadership and frontline employees, centering on the principles of dignity, equity, and sustainable progress for all stakeholders. Dr. Vance did not install herself as CEO. Instead, she appointed Dr. Patricia Williams, a brilliant black woman who had spent 2 decades turning around struggling Fortune 500 companies. Dr. Williams's first act was a listening tour to every factory and office, meeting with the 30,000 employees whose livelihoods the DeWitt family had so carelessly jeopardized. Initially, the company's stock plunged 30%. But as investors saw the serious systemic changes being implemented, the price stabilized and then began to climb. ESG-focused investment funds, which had previously blacklisted the company for its environmental record and poor governance, began buying up shares. The canceled Constellation partnership was replaced by a more innovative and profitable consortium of diverse suppliers, creating more jobs and a more resilient supply chain. The personal cost to the DeWitts was immeasurable, yet transformative. Brittany spent 6 months in an intensive executive rehabilitation program. It forced her to confront the unconscious biases and unearned privilege that had shaped her entire worldview. She emerged humbled, changed, and dedicated her career to mentoring women of color in STEM fields. Harry's journey was the most public. After a year of silence and intensive therapy, his once toxic social media presence was reborn. He launched a successful podcast, Privilege Check, where he interviewed people from marginalized communities about their experiences in corporate America, using his own story as a cautionary tale. Eleanor poured her energy into the Family Foundation, now rebranded as the Aspen Equity Foundation, which focused on funding educational initiatives for underserved communities. Harrison Sr., stripped of his power but not his wealth, spent his final years quietly advising other legacy companies on how to avoid the mistakes that had cost him his own. He and Dr. Vance developed a grudging professional respect. He saw her not as a conqueror, but as the architect of a better, stronger company than the one he had built. The marble floors of the St. Regis Ballroom are still polished to a mirror shine, but they now reflect a different world. 2 years after that fateful night, Dr. Alani Vance stands at a podium at the World Economic Forum in Davos. In the audience, leaders of nations and industries listen as she outlines her philosophy of dignity-driven capitalism. Power, she says, her voice calm and clear, is not about who you can exclude from the room. It is about how many people you can empower to build a better one. Her investment in DeWitt Global had returned over 40% annually, not just in dollars, but in human potential unleashed and dignity restored. She never needed the hostile takeover. The threat, wielded with surgical precision, was enough to force a transformation that decades of voluntary programs could never achieve. The story of that night became a legend, a modern fable taught in business schools and boardrooms. It's a story about how a single moment of casual cruelty can bring down an empire, and how a single individual, armed with intelligence, integrity, and a well-placed 38.2% ownership stake, can rebuild it into something better. These are the real stories that need to be told. Black stories of strategic genius, life stories that prove how profound transformation can arise from the ugliest of moments. Real-life stories where unwavering integrity triumphs over inherited arrogance. Now, it's your turn to join the conversation. What would you have done in Dr. Vance's position? Have you ever witnessed a moment like this, when unconscious bias was put on full display? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story of justice and accountability resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to see the true power of quiet strength and brilliant strategy. And most importantly, make sure you subscribe to the Black Voices Speak channel for more stories of triumph, transformation, and excellence. Hit that notification bell, because these voices and these stories deserve to be amplified. Together, we can do more than just change minds. We can change the entire culture, one strategic move at a time.